Steve Nelson, I'm Chief Exec of Westport. We are the active partnership that covers the whole of the west of England, so that's Bristol, Bath, and North East Somerset, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire. What is an active partnership? Well, essentially we are one of a network of 43 organisations spread across England, covering all of England, and our job is to advocate for and champion opportunities for people to be more physically active. And that's what we are actively working to do. I would broadly class what we do into sort of three elements. One is we're advocating for and championing sport and physical activity. The second is we're trying to provide the data, the insight, the knowledge that will help inform decisions and tell our story. And the third is around working with and through other organisations to put things on the ground. And part of the reason why we really like looking at really small scale projects is because that's an opportunity to demonstrate the value that physical activity can have. And we try to take those stories and share them with key decision makers within the system so they can better understand the influence that physical activity can have. The Active City Network allows a bit of a focus in Bristol and the work that these organisations are doing in Bristol. I guess for us our interest is a bit broader than that. So we've connected with them both in terms of Bristol and other places in our patch where they are working. For me, the purpose of any network is simple. You're trying to build connections, you're trying to build an understanding of what different organisations are working to achieve, and you're trying to work through to find common purpose. And for me, the Bristol Active City Network has been working very hard to do that over the last year. It is quite a mix of organisations that come at things from very different perspectives. You've got community organisations that are very much focused on their place and the people in their place, and being able to support those people not just through physical activity but a whole range of different activities and services, through to specialist sports organisations that are interested in delivering one sport across our patch, and they want to see that grow, their sport grow and evolve. But also I think there's recognition from all that are in the room that you have to work together to find some consensus and some compromise around how you interact in communities. There's no point just going and throwing activities on the ground if we've not had that understanding from those communities that it's something that's needed and wanted. I mean, sometimes just being in a room together creates an opportunity for conversation, understanding, collaboration. Any theory of it's just that. Any conditions that you in a lab you work out, this is how we're going to frame it. That's all well and good, but it's down then to the relationships that you build on the ground and how you interpret some of that quite formal academic language into something that makes sense to the people on the ground who are trying to deliver in communities, who are trying to engage and work with communities. So I think there's a real challenge, and I think, to be fair to now, the National Evaluation Learning Partnership, they are well aware that their language is somewhat divisive and exclusive, and they're trying, and I've suggested that, yes, they want to sort of find ways to simplify the language and find what works. But I think the challenge around all of that is we're in a people business. So when you're working with people, every time you share that framework, people will interpret it slightly differently, and it will take some time to build towards consensus and understanding of collectively what we can do together. And I think that's what the network's been trying to figure out as we've gone through the last year. Actually, what is our purpose? How do we connect, and what contribution can we make to the big challenges within the city? The start of this process, the carrot at the end of it, was significant investment from Sport England, potentially with Bristol being a priority place, and a place partnership. Unfortunately, for a whole range of reasons which now isn't the time to go into, Bristol did not make the final cut of priority places for Sport England. So they will have 80 priority places. Bristol will not be one of those. It does mean that the incentive, I guess, that started this work is maybe not there in the same way that it was. But I don't think that diminishes the work that's been done. or the need for the work that's happened. We need to understand how it is we can work more collectively. Our collective voice and effort is way more powerful than, I say, each of us working individually. And there will be other opportunities around investment that we will continue to explore for Bristol, with Bristol and with Sport England. In terms of moving forward from here, there is obviously some frustration, disappointment that we didn't get identified as a priority place, because I think all of us working locally know the challenges that exist in Bristol, know the inequalities that are there, and felt this was an opportunity to really address them. However, we don't have that funding. What we have is some support through Place Universal Offer. It's not on the same scale in terms of investment, but it gives us a chance to really examine what we've done over the last year and work out what are the one or two nuggets in here that we should be really driving forward now, that are going to make a difference to the communities where we're working, to the people who we connect with. So the next phase for us will be working with Bristol and with the Active City Network to identify what we take forward as part of a more universal approach as we try to work around places across the west of England.
How will that take shape? What would that look like?
That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer for it. The first bit is for this piece of work that you're involved in to be completed, and for the conclusions from this to be drawn. It's then about ourselves, Bristol, the network, identifying from that, okay, where do we go now? Given, what resource do we have? How do we apply that resource? And which of the things that we've talked about, and all these things that are in, the outcomes that we want to achieve, what's the one thing that we think we can focus on? And that might not include everybody within the network. That might be a focus in a single place or with a single audience. But again, I think that's a decision we're going to need to make. And at some point, I think it'll probably be down to ourselves and Bristol to go, well, actually, yes, there's all of these choices, all these Hobson's choices, we could use any of them, go in any direction, any of them will be valuable. But here's the one that we think is the right one. And then to galvanise the network around the outcomes that we want to work towards. But one of the other aspects that we will absolutely need to be picked up is that community engagement piece that, I think is still needed, where we can demonstrate we're bringing those voices into the room in the right way. The purpose of the network is still very much evolving in terms of understanding actually what is our reason for coming together and what are the actions that we're taking together that we can point to other things that we're doing. But there's then also that element of actually, it's a network, and most of the work of a network takes place outside of the meetings. It's the relationships that are built up that you then go away and can do some bits of work together, and opportunities for cricket, for example, to address some challenges around working with refugee community, or working in a particular place that's interested in having cricket as an option. So I think there's quite a lot of unpicking, I think, to do about how we galvanise around particular themes for the network. I don't think it is a network at the moment that's for the volunteer coach working at a community club. I do think it is a network that's much more targeted at the professional network, both in sport but also in communities, and trying to bring those two elements together so that you've got some synergy about, where you've got awareness of need coming out of place-based organisations, localities, and then you've got opportunities to bring in resource and support through some of the delivery organisations that are part of that network. And for me, it's just starting to recognise and use that as this is its purpose, and therefore, if that's what it's for, how do we point the right things at it and ask it to help us solve them? There is lots of great work going on across the city. A lot of it is not joined up. That is the nature of the places we live, the way in which we work, and how resources come into the whole region. Our job, part of Westport's job, is about trying to shine a light on those connections. And that's one of the things we continually are trying to do. I have to say it's an area that we would hold our hand up and say has been a weakness for us, but it's one that we are actively addressing as part of our the restructure that we've been going through, and we're out to recruit someone that we hope can help us articulate the story of our patch a bit more effectively than we've been able to do over the last few years. I think the Bristol Active City Network can play a role in shaping the future of work, the work that we do. My sense is we probably need to have a slightly more strategic thinking around, okay, so actually, as I touched on, if there are these, let's say, out of all of the work that's happened in the last year, there are 5 key priorities that emerge, then we collectively will need to work out which of those we focus on, because we with the resources we have, we won't, through universal offer, we can't do all 5. So if we pick on one, and that's our lead and focus, then that's the area that we'll drive. It might be, again, some of this might help the council colleagues in terms of articulating the need for their resources and their team and their structure. So again, it's looking at actually how does that resource fit with what everybody else is doing, and how do we start to tie that together in a way that the organisations that are working in communities understand how to engage with us and when to engage with us. So I think there's some working out to do still about how the network galvanises around particular activities or themes. And I think that's one of the things we need to look at through this next year. But I don't think it's just about what resource Westport has or what resource the council has, and I guess that was part of the point of the network. There are resources in all of those organisations, and at the moment we don't utilise them anywhere near as well as we should do. And sometimes we involve them in the wrong things at the wrong time, that then mean the next things that we want to involve them in, they maybe step away from. So again, we need to be really clear and targeted in our comms about why you might want to come to an event or a meeting, what it's going to be about, and why it's of relevance to you. And that might change from meeting to meeting.
Okay, that's great. In terms of the evaluation and the projects that have gone on this year, we've tried to document as much as we can through the films and through interviewing people and filming some of them, and then some of them just going sort of, as you would expect, extracts into the report. What would you like to see in the report that we're building? I'm asking you easy questions, am I? What would be useful for you in your organisation?
I think an honest reflection of where the network is at the moment. Is it strategic? Is it delivery? Is it just a nice place to come and have a chat? So I think there's a bit of, as you said, realism that needs to come out in the report, some of which may not be easy reading, but I think we need to acknowledge where we are.
Where would you say we are?
I'd say we've made some progress over the last year. There are better connections and relationships between organisations. Some of the personalities have changed as well, which has helped. And there's a willingness to do something, but I think we're all still waiting to work out exactly what that something is.
Who will be the lead in working out what that something is, do you feel?
Well, I think Westport have definitely got a role to play, a leadership role to play in that. With the universal offer now, we need to make sure what we're doing in Bristol also helps with the work we're doing in other places across our patch. So we will definitely have a role in that, but it's again, there will be other colleagues, and as part of this is about engaging people at the right time, so we're not wasting their time, but they feel they have the opportunity for input. But yeah, I think Westport will be in a position, hopefully, to help shape some of what happens next. But we'll have to look and see what comes out of this work that Bristol have led on as well, and be working closely with Bristol, to articulate what we need to take forward.
What is the biggest challenge, do you feel?
Time, resource, and I mean that from a number of angles, both our time and resource, because that is limited, but also the time and resource of the organisations that we wanted to engage. If we're going to bring them together, there has to be a clear purpose. There has to be a logic for us to get that sustained involvement. And that means that they feel they're getting something out of coming to these events, and it's not always giving. And as you know, people have been very generous with their time, they've given a lot to this, and we need to make sure they feel they're able to get something back, whether that's in knowledge, in connections, in resources, whatever it happens to be. We need to be trying to tie that back together.
Here's a slightly different question. The systems leadership, there's been quite a bit of work on that with Mayover. Have you any thoughts or reflections on that piece of work, or where Westport are in systems leadership?
I am personally a big believer in personal development, and work like this around systems leadership can really help you evolve. You know, the Clifton Strengths is something I've not used before. We've used a different tool within the organisation for quite a long time, but I think it's a very valuable thing to do, because it helps you understand what's your starting point, what are your values, what are the things that get you out of bed in the morning, what gets you excited, what doesn't, what turns you off. It allows you to understand yourself a bit better, but also that allows you then to understand your peers. Because you can look at them through that same lens. It gives you a language that you can use to start to describe how different people work and the strengths of those approaches. So I see that side of things as a real positive. Again, I think it's about having a clear follow-up opportunity or ask for those that have taken part. Because I know, again, there's been quite a lot of internal work within the City Council around leadership. My question then is, okay, so how does that feed into what we're trying to do as we go forward? And that's the thing we'll need to work through. Again, I think sometimes you have to appreciate Bristol is a city of 500,000 people. It's a big place, it's a complex place, and you cannot expect that one network is going to cater for everyone that has an interest in physical activity and sport. What we have managed to do is galvanise some very willing, relatively high-profile organisations who are all working across the city in some way, shape or form, who recognise the value of teamwork. And that's the starting point. And I don't think you can expect, hundreds of people to turn up to those events, because they then also lose their value if it's like that. If we want to really engage community organisations and people in communities, then we need to go where they are. And we need to go and ask them questions in their communities, not, check out an email and expect them to turn up to a central coordinated meeting. We need to go to them. And they need to have a reason why they want to come to us. My feedback, and again, I don't think any of this is news. It's taken some pretty simple principles that have been embedded in sport for development, I would say, for a very long time, and it is making it rather complex and formulaic when the work on the ground is not formulaic. You can't. It's hard to work in a formulaic way. Like you look at the matrix of the 9 conditions. Right. Okay, we're going to address these conditions. Now I get there needs to be a process from a Sport England perspective to be able to articulate the change that we're making, because again we're being funded in a very different way. We're being funded for our impact and our influence, as opposed to deliver a programme that's been set nationally, to deliver X number of widgets, and then to report back on how those widgets have got on. So I get the reason for wanting to be able to articulate why working in this way is really important. We have to simplify it. We have to simplify the language. We've got to get away from this boxing everything into segments for people to then have to respond to funding bids or opportunities in that same way. We've got to take a more holistic approach, a whole person approach, in my opinion.
Which is what's happening in sport at other levels, isn't it? The holistic whole person approach. Okay. Have you any ideas about how to move in that direction and how to nudge them?
Well, but from my perspective, from a Westport perspective, we've got Place Universal offer funding. We will be accountable for that funding. We will report back to Sport England on it, but the way in which we'll implement it will be in a way in which we think will work for us. We'll change the language if we need to. We won't use it where we don't think it's necessary, because I don't think people don't necessarily need to understand all of the big theoretical stuff behind it. It's about, okay, what difference does that make to this place, or to this activity, or to this individual, or to this group? That's what we're interested in. So yeah, we will. The framework is there, and we will have it as a reference point, but it's not a Bible.